Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. It's really great to have you with us today. This session is the first part of three-part webinar series based on our latest case study, IT Training 2030. Across these sessions, we'll look at one simple question: why IT training happens at scale, but real skill impact often stays low. Today is about the reality check. We will look at why IT skills change faster than training models can follow, how generative AI speed this up, why hiring alone does not close the gap, and why lack of time is a system issue, not an employee issue. We will try to find an answer to these questions. And this is not a session about tools, platforms, or new course formats, actually. It's about understanding what is structurally broken and why many well-meaning training efforts fail in real work. So this session is led by Clara. She is the author of the IT Training 2030 case study and works closely with IT leaders and organizations on building skills. In the next 30 minutes, Clara will walk you through the key findings of the study using real patterns, examples, and short interactions. There will be polls and questions for your self-critique, so feel free to take part and write your opinions or feedbacks as a comment below. With that, Clara, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Aslihan. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. And thanks to all of you for joining us live today. As Aslihan already said, this is a self-reflection webinar. Throughout the session, I will be asking you questions, and you are invited to answer them by yourself, or you can also use the comment section if you want to share your answer. That's totally up to you. Before we really get started, let me set expectations for the next 30 minutes. So this is not a webinar about new learning platforms, new certifications, or the next must-have IT skills. And it's definitely not about blaming people for not learning enough. Today, I want to show you something a little bit more uncomfortable, but also very useful. And I would like to start with you, with your own situation and the uncomfortable mirror. Before I explain anything, think about your own specific situation and needs, and I invite you to fill out or answer the first poll. The question is, how much of the last IT training you attended do you still actively use in your daily work? There are 4 answer options: A, almost everything; B, some of it; C, very little; D, honestly, almost nothing. No judgment, no consequences, just anonymous self-reflection. Take a moment to think about the question and go with your gut feeling. There's no correct answer here, of course. But here comes the most important thing, I would say, in the first 5 minutes. If you chose B or C, and even D, congratulations. You're not a bad learner. You're very normal and average in that. In fact, if you chose A, you might actually be the exception. And this is also shown in the graphic on the slide. Because what we are seeing here isn't an individual learning problem. It's a systematic pattern across companies, industries, and IT roles. We have a lot of highly motivated people, highly intelligent people, significant training budgets, and yet very, very little lasting impact on real work. So the question isn't, why don't people learn more? The real question we are facing is, why does so much learning fail to survive reality? And that's what we are trying to unpack today. And that brings me already to our latest case study. Let's go back to the very beginning. When I started working on it, I had one simple question in my mind, which was, what actually happens to people after they attended our IT classes or IT courses in general, and how much do they really implement that to their everyday life in their organization. So what did I do? I found plenty of studies from major organizations working on that topic, but one thing in that mess of studies was missing, and that's a clear red line, a structure, a narrative that organizes the mess. And instead of that red line, I was left with a pile of interesting quotes and results, but it was incredibly hard for me to turn them into real actionable learnings. So I decided to work on it myself, and I took the time to connect the dots I found in the studies and the results and build that narrative for you. So to make this problem more accessible to you, let me give you an example of a fictional company that acts as a prototype. Imagine now a highly capable IT organization, no lack of intelligence, no lack of motivation. In fact, we have smart, experienced IT people here, a generous training budget, access to modern learning platforms, and people who want to stay up to date, so they are highly motivated. So if you want to call it like that, a company that looks excellent on paper. The people attended the courses, they have completed modules, they have earned certificates. And if you only looked at the participation success rates, you would think this initiative is a real success. And yet, if you take a closer look to that company, something doesn't add up here. Because when I asked the question, what changed in daily work, the answer was surprisingly little. In the end, very few people applied the new knowledge consistently. New skills rarely influenced real decisions under pressure, and the performance indicators stayed largely the same. So we had learning, we had motivation, we had the investment, but what did not change was the sustainable performance impact. And this wasn't an exception. It showed up again and again across different teams, different roles, and different formats. So this case study shows once more we should not blame the people. And this is a very crucial point. At first glance, it's always tempting to say people don't have enough time, they're not disciplined enough. But the results across the studies show the main problem was not missing motivation, it was missing structural integration into real work. It's important that what was going wrong here is that learning happened next to work, and the application was expected after the learning. But the problem is that the later almost never came. The system that tried to measure the success rate measured activity, not impact, completion, not capability, certificates, not changed behavior. And now my question to you is, think about the last training you attended, or maybe also trainings you've done in the past, trainings your colleagues did. And if you look at the behavior of you or your colleagues' behavior, does this sound familiar to you? You can use the comment section again, or use pen and paper or your mind and answer if this sounds familiar in your organization, or if you have truly cracked the code and learning reliably changes performance to you. Take a second and be honest here. If you agree with this statement and you say, yes, this sounds familiar to me, you have the proof that this case study matters. Because again, what you are seeing here is not a learning problem. It's a structural design pattern problem, and this needs to be changed. I brought another headline, which is the more complex IT becomes, the less traditional training works. Let that sit for a second. Try to read it over again. And yeah, it sounds kind of odd because intuitively we expect the opposite. More complexity should mean more training. That's at least how most of us think. And this case study and the broader evidence showed the reverse. So this is the paradox. You can also see it in this figure. When we attended a training, we have 100% of skills, but in the end, 20% or less are used in the company, or we are able to only apply 20% of what we've learned, which is very, very low considering how much money is spent every year on the trainings. And this is the paradox. IT didn't outgrow education. Education didn't evolve with IT. So let's continue with the awkward truths of certifications. This is usually the moment where it gets even more uncomfortable. And let me say that very clearly to you. Certifications measure exposure to information, but not capability in reality. That doesn't mean certifications are useless. However, they are more of a proxy for something they can't actually prove. And here's the gap. Exams do not equal decision-making under pressure. Learning does not equal transfer into work. Knowing does not equal doing. In the case study, people passed exams. They could explain concepts. They knew the terminology in the end. But when systems failed and priorities conflicted or risks appeared or anything was just not as in the training setting, they continue with old patterns and not the newly learned ones. So yeah, they stick to their habits in the end and had no chance to apply that new skills directly at the workspace. Think about the last certification that you have earned, but try to not overthink it and now rate it just for yourself on a scale 1 to 10. How much did it actually change how you work day to day? So it's not about how valuable it looks or how good it felt to pass. It's really about the performance in the end and how it changed your real decisions. You can use the comment section again or a piece of paper. And now if that number is low, I promise you that's not directly a personal failure. It's more of a signal that we are measuring the wrong thing and expecting it to be a real world capability in the end, even if it's not. So we can conclude from that that the problem is not motivation. The problem is not intelligence. The problem is the structure of IT continuing education itself. And when we looked across the case study and the broader evidence, everything collapsed into 3 structural limits. So we encountered 3 structural limits over and over again. They were mentioned in different papers, and I would like to introduce those 3 structural limits to you now. The first limit is decontextualized learning. Most IT trainings still happen outside the system where the work actually takes place. So outside real architectures, real constraints, real trade-offs, real risks. And people instead learn in clean, simplified environments. And then after the training, they are still expected to transfer them to the real life situations. The complex, messy reality. And it's not that skills fail because people forget the content. No, it's more that the context was never part of the learning, and it's very difficult to apply things to a context that we don't associate with this skill. And what isn't learned in context rarely survives context in the end. The second structural limit we encounter is event-based learning. A course happens, a workshop happens, a certification happens, there's a spike of attention and motivation, even confidence during the training, and then reality returns. Emails pile up, projects continue, priorities shift, and the knowledge decays quietly. And this is not because people don't care, but because learning was designed as an event, not as a process. And in a fast-changing IT environment, one day of learning can't compete with the continuous change and process we encounter during everyday work. And we come to our third and last structural limit, which is individual focus and system problems. The third limit is the most uncomfortable one, I would say. We try to solve system problems by training individuals. So when something doesn't work, the reflexes usually send people to another training, add another module, offer another certification. But the environment in everyday work stays the same. So we have the same pressure, we have the same incentives, we have the same delivery expectancies. And then we are surprised that the behavior doesn't change. So nobody even questions the environment. And there's one rule of thumb, which is you can't train your way out of a broken system. So if the structure behind the team is completely broken, you can't expect that everything changes just because one person has more skills in the end. So basically what I want to say is that skills don't live in people alone. They live in roles, they live in workflows, tools, and decisions. I've introduced the 3 structural limits to you. Take a moment now to reflect for yourself if one of the structural limits is present in your company, might be even the problem why you don't move. Take a moment here, reflect for yourself, or in the comment section what is most appealing to you. And here's the key insight. As long as these structural limits stay in place, we can optimize courses, of course, platforms and formats forever, but still nothing will change and there won't be any real impact. This brings us to the most important shift of all. What actually works instead. However, unfortunately, this won't be the topic of today. We will have another webinar on that next week. So if you are interested in the more optimistic side, proving that IT continuing education isn't broken, it's just aimed at the wrong target right now. Feel free to join our session next week. Next week, we will go more into details on what to implement in order to see that change. Before I finish that webinar, I want you to remember one last thing. So if you forget everything from today, remember this one sentence. If learning does not change decisions under real pressure, it's learning. It's not learning, it's information consumption. And that's the dividing line. Not participation, no certificates, not completion rates. It's really about decisions under pressure. And I have something you can apply immediately to check that in the future and to make sure that you're not part of that vicious circle of doing one training after the other without having real impact. Next time you want to book another training, think about the question, where exactly will this change behavior in real work and when? If the answer is clear to you, feel free to book the training. I think if you know exactly which skill you need and that this skill is the solution to the problem, it's a great investment. However, if your answer is not clear, don't book the training. Try to look behind the system first. What is broken? How can it be fixed? Is the training the real solution? Talk to your colleagues about it. Don't waste your money on that. If you can't apply the skills might even be useless. That's pretty much it for today. Thank you very much for your participation. I hope you learned something and that you apply the learning nugget in your next decision process. And I hand over to Aslahan now for the final words.
Thank you for your time and your effort on the report and all the information you shared. And before we close, a quick note on what's next. The next sessions in the series take a deeper look at why these problems exist and how organizations can respond. We will share the dates and details on our social media channels, so you can follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Reddit. Also, feel free to comment what is on your mind, what resonated, and what didn't. If you want to go deeper, the full case study explains what actually works and why. I will share the links to both in the English and German versions of the report in the comments below. So thanks again for joining us today, and see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.